Welcome to Speed Talk Live, which isn't really live, but a poorly produced podcast where we talk about NASCAR and all things racing. And occasionally we have a special guest or two, when we can get them to show up. Sit down, strap in, pull those belts tight. Speed Talk Live is on the air.
Pace car is in. Green flag, green flag, green flag.
Welcome to Speed Talk Live, everybody. I'm Greg Engel, glad to have you. Coming out of the beautiful mess that was the Chicago Street Course, we're going to talk about that. A lot of driver changes, some other stuff going on. But first, let's welcome in Owen Johnson, Associate Editor, Cupscene.com. Hello, my friend. How are you?
Hello, Greg. I'm great. It's great to see you.
Good to see you, my friend. Let's talk about Chicago. And I know you've got some particularly good insight after we talk about wrapping up the race. Of course, Alex Bowman won the race, and there was a lot of things going on. It rained. The rain delayed the race for 90 minutes. And then we had the stoppage. We had protesters delay the start of the race. We finally got it. NASCAR, it was a timed race, which I thought was fantastic. The last couple of laps was fantastic to see Alex Bowman hold off Tyler Reddick. It was a whole tire thing. Alex was running the slicks. They were older. Tyler had fresher or rain tires, or somebody had rain tires. Somebody had slicks. They had them, but it was a tale of two tire strategies. He held off Tyler Reddick. Tyler Reddick on the last lap messed up coming out of turn 12, bumped the wall, and Alex got his much needed win. So Alex Bowman led 6 laps the entire season. Sunday, he led a total of 8, including, of course, the most important one, which was the final one to win his first race in 80 races. And of course, it makes you wonder, with all that time gone by, did he still know how to hold off somebody at the front of the field and win the race?
Yeah, I mean, the position that we were in, like, I knew as we got tire temp, we were a lot better than the 60. I didn't know what was coming behind us on slicks. I didn't know how hard I could run without killing the wet tire, just because I haven't been in that position. Obviously missed all the wet laps at New Hampshire, missed a lot of laps here last year. So I probably could have made a lot more pace there with like 3 to go and with 2 to go. I was kind of trying to take care of the tires, and then I realized that there was slicks coming, and ran pretty hard there for the last 2 laps. So, yeah, I mean, I was thinking about, I knew there wasn't going to be a lot of laps because there was only so much time left in the race, and I knew with the gap that I saw behind me that we were in a really good spot.
So look, he had a concussion last year, missed some races, or last year he also broke his back, missed some races, but he did have, coming into this race, as the second highest total of 11 top 10s, the second highest in the series, coming into Chicago. But of course, he hadn't won in 80 races. Despite a lack of a win, the only Hendrick Motorsports car among the 4 without a win, Hendrick Motorsports never gave up on Alex Bowman.
You know, it's so important. These guys work so hard. And you get to, you know, certainly I get to spend time with guys like Blake, and you see him come in to Hendrick Motorsports, and there's a lot of pressure and expectations there. And so that's the same way for Alex and all the drivers. And so it's important that, you know, you gel and the chemistry comes and the effort's there, but you got to win. At some point, you got to win, not just because you're at Hendrick Motorsports. It's because, you know, it's really hard to get the team where they need to be to compete at the highest level on a regular basis, make the playoffs, then compete at a high level in the playoffs without victories coming, to just remind everybody that we're doing the right things and we're working in the right direction and you know, we're working well together. So, yeah, I think today was a huge day for both of these guys and the whole team, and I couldn't be more proud or happy for the whole group, because you know, I know what kind of pressure that they've been feeling, and it's amazing for all of us now, you know, to have all 4 cars in the playoffs. And it's probably a bit of a reset now, right? Of okay, that weight just keeps getting heavier and heavier every week, and I think it just makes it harder and harder. And then they come in here and get asked a lot of questions. So I'm sure for both of them, it's nice to have this one off their back and then just start focusing forward on getting where they need to be in the playoffs.
So SVG won on Saturday in a thrilling race under sunny skies. And then Sunday, under the rain, he and Larson, who was another favorite, both crashed out. The highlight to me, obviously, was Joey Hand winning a stage and finishing fourth. I thought that was a fantastic performance. And it was just weird. Like I said, we had protesters delay the start of the race. Then we had a rain delay. Then we had a timed race, which NASCAR had said early on, the race is going to stop at 8:30 p.m. Central Time. Wherever they're at, they're going to get the white flag and the next flag will end it. I thought that was a fantastic move. It was great. The biggest problem we had last year, all the festivities leading up to the race were rained out, and the race itself had a slight bit of rain, but it pretty much ran to conclusion. This year, it was just the opposite. All the concerts and all the stuff going on, the Saturday's Xfinity race, all had clear skies. Then the rain moved in. It makes you wonder, is it worth it for NASCAR to have a street race? I think so. And I think Chicago's a great place. But if not, I think they have proven that a street race is a valuable product to have. And Joey Logano agrees with that.
I think the fact that we're bringing the race to the fans, or even bringing the race to not fans, is so important. This is about growth, right? I mean, if you're a diehard NASCAR fan, you're going to go to a race, right? You're going to travel. You're going to do the whole experience. You're going to go, wherever your favorite track may be that you want to see the cars at and do the whole nine. Whereas here, if you're not a NASCAR fan, well, guess what? We're in your face. You're here. Like you're gonna like it. We're gonna make you like it at least, or at least you're gonna have to see it. You can't get away from it. Whether it's the advertising through the city that you see just driving around here, which is great. Hearing the race cars, they're gonna hear the race cars all through the city, right? And these cars aren't quiet by no means. So you're gonna hear and go, what's going on, right? And curiosity is gonna get the best of everybody. They're gonna come over here and want to see what's going on. Even last year, you think about the people who are trying to peek through the fence, right? They didn't have a ticket, but they're trying to look through the fence to see the race cars. They're just curious, like, what's going on here? What's bad about that? Nothing. Like, that's all good things. So I love the idea of doing this. Yes, as a driver competing, is it challenging? Absolutely, right? Logistically, is it challenging for the teams? Absolutely. Is it worth it? Yes. Like, it's totally worth doing. It seems like there's so many positives that comes out of our sport long term.
All right. So we had a completely an insider, because speaking of all the festivities leading up to the race, we had somebody there on the ground who was in an incognito role as a fan. He wasn't there as a member of the media. We're talking about our own Owen Johnson. Owen, talk about the fan experience at Chicago.
Yeah, it was a great time to get some of the fan experience on the ground. When we go to the media center, we see a very different side of the sport. So it was good to see how NASCAR treats the fans, and I had a great time. Got to go with my dad, which is always also fun. But we talk about the rain at the race. I definitely feel it a whole lot more than when you're in the covered media center. We were sat under a tree, so a little bit of blocking from the rain, but it would come through the tree and get right on us. So we definitely felt the rain this weekend. But I remember thinking prior to the race, with all the things NASCAR puts on this weekend, with the fact that it's right in the middle of a great downtown city, I almost am okay with the race getting shortened. Now, I say almost because I'm here for the race and I always want to see great racing. But more than any other race weekend, I was okay with a bit of race shortening. The festivities were great. Lots of great concerts. The Xfinity race on Saturday went off without a hitch. Great racing between Kyle Larson and Shane Van Gisbergen. And everything NASCAR put on was really great for the fans. I thought NASCAR did a really good job, especially compared to Formula One with some of its street races, especially Las Vegas, and the amount of time they take of just putting the race up about a day before the race, taking it down the day after. minimal disruption to the city streets. Obviously, if you're Chicago resident, some are still unhappy. But for the most part, great for NASCAR fans, great for Chicago to see something new. And I loved seeing the mayor come out, give the command to start engines, I think, wearing a fire suit. I think we might get some more support. I really hope this event comes back. I thought NASCAR did a great job, and I'm really happy to see at least most of it in the sun.
And Ben Kennedy was talking on Sirius XM. Of course, we don't have the schedule released yet. That could come at any day, although I'm hearing it's going to be next week as they get some of the foreign stuff figured out. But Ben Kennedy seemed to hint that we are going to be back at Chicago next year. And I thought the optics were great. Yeah, it rained, which made the racing more exciting. You still had good crowds going on. It wasn't perfect, but I think if we can get a year where we don't have weather affecting anything throughout the whole weekend, it's just going to be the best it can possibly be. But I think we're going to be there next year. And again, that's what Ben Kennedy kind of hinted on Sirius XM in the days leading up to that. So we'll have something official on that. Something that did happen on the cool down lap. Alex Bowman was doing his cool down lap, and Bubba Wallace came in and smashed into him with his car, did a little bump. I guess there was some tie up earlier. They got together and Byron acknowledged that, Bowman acknowledged that and apologized. I guess Bubba was a little upset. But NASCAR this week fined him $50,000 for that incident on the cool down lap. Ironically, or kind of weirdly, Chase Elliott and Daniel Suarez also had a dust up. But I think the biggest difference, at least in my mind, was the fact that you could see Elliott and Daniel Suarez on pit road after the race, and they were making nice. And so I think they kind of, got over it. But some may not remember that, for the record, Suarez was fined the same amount, $50,000 last year for hitting Bowman's car on pit road last year. Like I said, at Coda. So the fine to me seems to be about in line. But as you point out, Owen, there's been some backlash for the penalty.
Right, there's been some backlash. You can point to other examples of drivers wrecking each other on the cooldown lap, some inconsistency there. And there probably is some inconsistency, but I do think there is a difference, like you said, between the two things. And it's not even just that they made nice on pit road. I think Bowman was perfectly happy to, in the media center after, acknowledge that, he pushed Bubba into the wall, took him out of the race. The 23 was on pit road almost every caution, completely out of the race. And he acknowledged that Bubba was justified in being angry. The problem, I think, is the severity of the contact. The 23 pushed the 48 really hard into the wall while his window net was down while Bowman was celebrating, whereas the 9 made a little bit of contact with Suarez, brake checked him, but there wasn't really anything particularly dangerous. Maybe it deserved a penalty. I know NASCAR called him to the hauler and certainly talked to him, sat him down after the race. I hope he doesn't do that again. Certainly no need for dangerous driving on the cooldown lap, but I do think there's something different. But I think this was just particularly egregious. We need to be discouraging slamming into each other in 3,000-pound vehicles before someone gets seriously hurt. And to those on social media who are criticizing the penalty because it doesn't let the driver show character if they're not allowed to bump into each other on a cooldown lap, I don't want to see that side of the character of the drivers. There's no reason. Safety violations are not the side of the character I want to see. Let them show their character in interviews, not on the racetrack like that.
And sadly, I think some of the backlash comes from the fact that Bubba Wallace is African American. I'm not gonna hide that fact. And those criticisms because of that are wrong. He belongs in the Cup Series. He has the talent to be in the Cup Series, and he certainly doesn't deserve anything other than being critical of things like you mentioned. But to criticize him just simply because of who he is, I think is wrong. And hopefully those will go away in the future. Hey, something else that happened while you were there, the EV finally debuted. It was supposed to debut back in LA in February. I was all tuned up to see it. And of course the rain stop that. But there you were, you saw it. We all finally saw it. I think it's a good looking vehicle, but don't look for it to be racing anytime soon. Saturday was more about glitter used to announce a partner for NASCAR's sustainability plan. and it's a goal for them to reduce their carbon footprint to 0 by 2030. That remains to be seen. But in terms of seeing something racing different than a gasoline powered car, one of the things that you really have to dig into this plan, a goal of the sustainability plan for NASCAR is for the sport to move operations from what they term as a scope 1, which is fuel burning, to scope 2, which will be electric, for the on-track product. Now, it makes sense when the next step in NASCAR's green evolution on the track, it won't be an all-electric car, but it'll be a switch to hydrogen, a clean burning fuel that leaves no carbon footprint. Now, last year, Toyota, one of NASCAR's OEMs, debuted a hydrogen race car in a race in Japan. It was an amateur-driven event, but they had the hydrogen-based sports car over there, and it was raced in a series that's similar to the Grassroots series in America. NASCAR executives travel to see that. So I think the final step, you're going to see hydrogen before you see anything hydrogen in these cars, because it doesn't take a lot to adapt to that. I think it's more the infrastructure they're going to have to adapt. And the final step before we move to that all electric is something that could become a reality, I predict, in the next 5 years. And that's NASCAR stock cars racing hybrid powertrains, which is an internal combustion engine and in combination with some sort of electric power add-on. It's already been raced in Formula One. And the IndyCar series debuted this past weekend at Mid-Ohio, and it went off without a hitch. And in fact, if you think back, the next gen car was designed with such a system in mind. So that, rather than an electric car, an all electric cars, it will be the next, and it's a next step, and it's a logical one, and it's an achievable one. So Saturday's announcement wasn't about just seeing this cool car, the crossover. In the coming years, fans are going to see snippets of electrification in the sport. You're going to see more green facilities that use solar energy, more charging stations at the tracks, and more electric vehicles, but only electric vehicles taking NASCAR executives and officials to the track or maybe lunch, not actually racing on the track. So expect to see the crumbs everywhere at a track about the world of electrification. And that prototype they showed off Saturday is a slice of the electric pie as time marches on. Whether the next generation of fans sitting in the grandstands at Charlotte, talking in normal voices as those EV crossovers with bodies made from flowers rush by, is still a dream at this point. And given the current contentious political climate in America, if a new political party takes office in November, the U.S., which is stated to have a stated goal of 0 carbon footprint by 2035, could become like a Sasquatch, because they've got a huge footprint, and they disappear in the woods, and perhaps give NASCAR less motivation to meet their own stated goal, which is their own carbon footprint to 0 in 2035. I think I said 2030. It's 2035. For me, EV racing in NASCAR now is like an electric boogaloo, and that's a flash, a dance. Whether it ever becomes just more than a work in progress, well, we have no real end in sight. And like I said, they put the tap shoes on, they took it for a dance on Saturday, and we got to see it. And you were there. What was your impression of it, Owen?
Yeah, I spoke to some of the ABB people. They had a trailer at the track talking about some of their sustainability initiatives. And what I was struck by is all the initiatives were things that the tracks could be doing, things that NASCAR could be doing, but nothing about the on-track product. I think that's exactly right. We'll see some more solar initiatives. We have that at tracks already. We'll see more like that, where the tracks are going to become increasingly carbon neutral. The events are going to limit the amount of trash they're producing, things like that, which I think we can all get behind, whereas the on-track product will stay similar to what we've seen. And I think that's a lot to do with where the manufacturers are at. They had a display with all the manufacturers' cars, and there just aren't the same amount of electric cars as a couple of years ago we might have predicted by this point. Manufacturers are moving away from electric cars, and if the manufacturers don't want them, NASCAR is definitely not going to build it. So it's going to come down to, like you say, where the political climate goes, where the manufacturers go. For the time being, I wouldn't expect it on track anytime soon.
And look how long it took us to get to ditch the carburetors in the Cup Series, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they outlawed, first off, they outlawed unleaded fuel in 1975. And we were using leaded fuel until, 10 years ago. And now it's this E3 green. It's, it's got corn in it, whatever. Hey, it runs the race cars and they're slamming around the track. But you're right. I think it's going to take NASCAR a lot longer to catch up, because the old adage, one of the 10 commandments in NASCAR used to be win on Sunday, sell on Monday. And that's not as applicable as it used to be. But until the electric car makes more of an inroad into the consumer market, it's not going to be as much, there's not going to be as much pressure on NASCAR to go all electric. So it's going to be fun to see. I predict that when you're my age, it could be the norm. And when us old guys, as we die off and we're not around to whine anymore, it's going to be, something that's within your landscape and something you're going to see. And for us, I'm talking about the old people, we're not going to be around to whine. So who cares? So the EV's there. We got pictures. You got some pictures. They're up on cupscene.com, and there'll be more about that to come. Let's catch up on the other news. Rodney Childers got a job. He's going to Spire Motorsports. I thought that was kind of weird. Good for Spire. I think he's going to be great. I think he's going to help elevate that program there. I'm glad that those that have to jump the sinking ship that is Stewart-Haas Racing are finding, lifeboats and finding new boats to get on, new ships, so to speak. So Childers is going to Spire. Haley Deegan and AM Racing parted ways. They'll have Josh Berry in the Xfinity car this weekend. Joey Logano got in the AM race car this week in the Xfinity race and ran a top 10, which kind of put the nail in Deegan's coffin, I think. So and she was supposed to have the full season with them, but so far the results that they had were put it kindly underwhelming. Through the first 17 races, Deegan has only 4 races with finishes inside the top 10. Her average finish was 26.8. And like you said, and you were there to see it, they put Joey Logano in that AM race car on Saturday. And what were your thoughts on that?
Right, he drove up to finish 8th in that race. So he's a 2-time champion, obviously a really good driver, but he's still a little bit hit or miss on the road courses. In the Cup Series race in Chicago, he ended up finishing 23rd after starting 32nd. And he still managed to drive that car up to 8th, which clearly suggested to the team that it was a driver problem more than a team problem. I'm not sure I fully agree. There was one notable exchange over the radio where Logano had to explain to the crew chief, who's still relatively new, how to make the adjustments that he needed, which I just don't think you could expect a rookie to do. But we'll see if the results improve for the number 15 team with some other Ford drivers. Barry, who's a little bit newer himself to the Cup Series, and even NASCAR in general. Maybe if he struggles with the car, maybe it wasn't a Deegan problem. But we'll have to figure out as the season goes on. Certainly put the nail in the coffin for her, though.
Yeah, and it begs the question at this point: is this the last we see of her? And I think that would be a shame, because Deegan once seemed to be poised to become NASCAR's next shining female star. Particularly when Ford snapped her up for their development program in 2019. I mean, her full-time foray into the NASCAR Truck Series in 2021 yielded 5 top 10 finishes and 68 starts and an average finish of 21.3. It was a respectable effort, but hardly the stuff of legend. But I generally think that Haley's just needs to find the right chemistry with someone. Hopefully she finds that. Hopefully it's not the last we've seen of her. We need a female racer in the Cup Series. We need a female racer that can be competitive in the right equipment. And we'll see. Because I hope not. I hope she can find the right chemistry somewhere, and we're going to see her. And you bring up another good fact.
Yeah, so we talked about the SRX series last summer, racing midweek races in the summer, and she competed in that series, and I was really impressed. One of the races, she finished second, almost held off Tony Stewart for a while, finished runner-up to Tony Stewart, and he commented on her talent. I thought clear evidence of her talent. I know she can drive. I'm very confident in that. She has to find the right equipment, the right car, somehow develop her talents in NASCAR. And I think she's still a very talented driver who can do it.
Yeah, and I forgot about that. She did do very well in the SRX series. So I think she's got the talent. We'll have to see. Hey, Noah Gregson found a home. leaving only Ryan Preece without a home next season. He is replacing Michael McDowell at front row. Michael McDowell obviously is going to Spire Motorsports, and it's going to be interesting to see with Rodney Childers at Spire. Him and McDowell together could be a potential power team. So we'll see how that goes. Of course, the only SHR driver now, like we mentioned, is Ryan Preece. He needs a ride, but it's got me thinking. Stewart Haas Racing co-owner Gene Haas, he's going to keep one of the team's charters, and he'll run a one-car version of a slimmed-down former SHR next season in the Cup Series. And there's a lot of speculation that the current Xfinity driver for the team, who happens to be the son of of the current SHR president, Joe Custer, Cole Custer, could be the driver for the Cup Series. And some people seem to peg that in and say that he's going to be that for sure. But you know what? I'm thinking it might not come as a surprise if Preece isn't the driver who's tagged to carry on what's left of that tattered SHR banner, and Cole stays in the Xfinity Series. We'll see how that plays out. What are your thoughts on that, Owen?
I still think we've talked about it before. I still think Custer is likely, just with the family connection, the historic drives in Cup. I think he's likely to take it's going to be the Haas factory team seat. But I think Preece will probably have a ride with that team's Xfinity program, if nowhere else, next year. I think there's no way he doesn't make a start, at least in the top two divisions of NASCAR. We know he's talented. He may find a ride. There's still some seats potentially available that some Xfinity and truck drivers have been rumored to take, but he could still take one of those.
We'll see. I mean, there you go. There's our debate. Maybe this time next year we'll be talking about Cole Custer or Ryan Preece. So we'll see. The final bit of good news that we got this week: John Force, NHRA Legends, out of a Virginia hospital and is back home in California in a rehab center, continuing his long road to recovery. Had that hard crash last month in Virginia, and has suffered some TBI, traumatic brain injury. Also, I heard he broke his sternum, broke his wrist. So, the guy's 75 years old, and I hope it's not going to be this way, but I'm thinking this is probably going to be turn into somewhat of a retirement tour. Sadly, I don't think we'll see John Force racing again. Prove me wrong. He's a great guy. I love the guy. I've talked to him on several occasions. I've interviewed him on several occasions. He's one of those interviews, like Kenny Wallace, that you don't so much ask questions and they give you a little answer and you just kind of turn them loose. And I mean that in a good way. So John Force has always been good to me. I know all his daughters. One of his daughters was actually a co-host of the show when we did it live. She came out to Disney and sat there and co-hosted the show, and we talked NASCAR and NHRA. She stayed around for a couple hours signing stuff for fans. So the great family, John Force, I want him to live long and prosper, but unfortunately, I don't think we're going to see him on the track. And again, I hope he proves me wrong.
Just rant and rave like you do to the TV during sports.
All right, let's talk about rants. Now, we mentioned the protests earlier. They didn't get a lot of TV airtime, good, and I'm glad they didn't. But we had a couple protesters. Good for them. They got arrested, by the way. They went to jail. They were in jail as of Monday morning. I don't know where they're out now. Don't care. Don't care what you're protesting. Don't do it at a NASCAR track. And as they learned, fans in NASCAR don't like that too much. And what you're looking at is a video of one of the NASCAR fans actually pulling these guys' banners away from them after they climb the fence. Now, they locked themselves in the fence, which idiots, and the police came and unlocked them and took them into custody. Again, I don't care what you're protesting. Don't do it at a NASCAR track during a race. You want to stand at the entrance to the track? Great. That's fine. God bless America. We can do that. Don't do it at the track. Don't chain yourself. That was the dumbest thing ever. They tried it in F1. I think it was last season. They put themselves, they glued themselves to the track. You remember that, Owen?
Yes, it was the British Grand Prix last year, and they stood in the middle of an active racetrack. I think fortunately for them, there was a red flag that came out right when they ended up doing it, so there was no on-track action. The TV didn't cover it at all. Same with NASCAR, which I think is a really good move. Don't give them the publicity because that's all they want. And I mean, don't glue yourself to. Don't be involved in an active racetrack. That's just you're not going to get your message out there if you're going to get hit by a car. That's not the right place to do a protest for yourself or anyone else. That's not a good idea.
Here, here. I couldn't agree with you more, my friend. And on a speaking of a hot track, I don't know who it was, but somebody got their hard card snatched. Member of the media, they tried to drive a golf cart right before the rain delay stopped, and the track was hot again. And again, I don't know who it was, but there was a famous instance, and I'll say it. Jeff Gluck many years ago at California Speedway when it's still open, and I was there for this. He asked an official on pit road if the track was hot because he was going to go across the track and meet his family. And the official mistakenly told him the track was fine. He crossed the track. There was no cars on track, nothing like that. It just happened to be hot, getting ready for stuff. He got his hard card pulled. Had to go to the NASCAR hauler and wait to see NASCAR officials to get his hard card back. So first thing I thought of this weekend when I heard that was where's Jeff Gluck and is he okay? But I don't know who it was, but somebody, like I said, got there. So don't go on the bottom line is don't go to a hot track. And if you want to protest outside the race. Don't ever, because it's a dangerous place to be. And God forbid some idiot protester gets themselves killed by trying to make a statement. There's no cause in the world that's worth that. Okay. So listen, let's look forward to Pocono. I say look forward because now that we don't go there twice a year, we can look forward to it, because I can remember the days when we ran Pocono almost back to back. It was like a month apart. And some of the races there were less than to be desired. But now that we're down to one race, we don't do the doubleheader, which I think was a big fail. Now I think having it once a year is great. So who have you got for Pocono?
Well, we've got to talk about Bowman. I remember when we're talking about the double headers. I remember the 2021 doubleheader weekend. Larson was on a roll, going for 2 or 3 wins in a row, and blew a tire while leading on the last lap, opening the door for Bowman to get a win. So there's always some crazy moments at Pocono. 3 very different corners that force the drivers and the crew chiefs to adapt on the fly as the track and the cars change. But I've got my eye on Hendrick Motorsports. They seem to always run very well at Pocono. And I think it's going to be the 24. It's crazy that we haven't talked about William Byron much since he opened the season with, 3 wins in 8 races. But since then, he hasn't gone back to victory lane. I think that changes at Pocono. And I think it's going to be, even if it's not Byron, some Hendrick driver. They always tend to find the way up front and get a win at this track.
Somebody else who has 3 wins this year is Denny Hamlin. And he was the winner. He was the winner there last year. Can he do it again? I don't know. I think he's on a cold streak right now. He hasn't exactly had anything to write home about, but I don't think he's hot enough to do it again. I could be wrong. But why not Chase Elliott? He's won there. He's had some good runs this year. But I think the story of the weekend would be if Kyle Busch could finally break through and get in the win column. But we'll see. You talk about Hendrick Motorsports. So you got Byron. I got Elliott. With my backup as Busch. You have a backup, because my backup's Busch, and I think you should have one.
I think we're going to see some strong performances from front row. I was really impressed with Gilliland at the street race, and the front row Fords have been fast. So I'll pick Gilliland as my dark horse pick in the dark horse Mustang.
There you go, the dark horse Mustang. All right, newly back from Chicago. Appreciate your insights, my friend. Thank you for tuning in, everybody. We really appreciate it. Let's look forward to Pocono. Hopefully it doesn't rain. We won't have rain tires. And hopefully the schedule will be out by then, by the next time we talk. But we'll wrap up Pocono next week. We'll talk about whatever other news happens to surface. We appreciate it. Thanks for your support. Like, subscribe. We'll see you next time. Take care, everybody. Thanks for listening to Speed Talk Live. For questions, or just to tell us how bad our production is, or to leave other feedback, leave us a comment below. For all the latest NASCAR news, visit www.cupscene.com. Until next time, peace out, and let's go racing.
right, there's the checkered flag. Great job, driver.